interesting times. Today's stories. Stahl's Park the Princess is sold for 20 million euros. America's endless battle against the lethal drug fentanyl. Spanish falcons feed the Arab passion for raptor hunting. Water woes sway Indigenous voters in Canada. Terminally ill Canadian teen urges to get out to vote. Jagmeet Singh campaigns to unseat Trudeau in the upcoming Canadian election. Plus, Canada's Sweethearts captivate its Vancouver audience. For EBC Sports, Leonard returns to Canada for the NBA preseason action in Vancouver. I'm Archie Rose Natividad Yi with Eagle News, broadcasting from our Vancouver studio, bringing you stories from around the globe. Nicolas de Stael's painting Park the Princess from 1952 is sold at an auction for 20 million euros by Christie's in Paris, setting a record for a work by the artist. A monumental painting by Nicolas de Stael was sold for 20 million euros at Christie's auction on Thursday, in what could be the most paid for a painting of a football match. It was certainly the highest price obtained for a painting by the French artist of Russian origin, who died in 1955 at the age of 41. Park the Princess, painted in 1952, was estimated to be worth between 18 and 25 million euros, or $20 to $27 million, and was on the market for the first time. The piece was owned by the artist's family and was exhibited only a handful of times. Between 1953 to 2003, it was displayed in New York, various galleries in Paris, such as the Pompidou Center, as well as in London and Madrid. The painting, which features a rich array of colors from teal to bright white, depicts an international friendly match between Sweden and France in 1952 during a golden generation of French football players. Parc des Princes is the name of a stadium that has since been replaced and now hosts the Paris Saint-Germain club. Christie said the picture represents the height of Nicolas de Stael's art, as well as a decisive moment in the history of post-war Western art. Other avant-garde artists and masterpieces from the 20th century were also up for grabs at the Christie's auction in Paris. Works by René Magritte, Max Ernst, Pablo Picasso, Yves Klein, Serge Poliakoff, Paul Klee, Alberto Giacometti, Jean Dubreuil, and Joan Muir were also being auctioned. According to the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention, born from the overprescription of opioid painkillers, the opioid crisis has cost America more than 400,000 lives from 1999 to 2018. One of the main dangers is fentanyl, a lethal synthetic opioid 100 times more powerful than morphine. The U.S. is fighting an endless battle to stop it from flowing in. More than 1 million letters and packages pass through JFK Airport every day, making it an unexpected frontline in America's opioid crisis.
What's happening is the officers are reviewing X-ray images of the parcels and making decisions on whether or not the parcel should be open for physical exam.
Since 2016, one of the top priorities for border agents is to prevent illegal fentanyl from entering U.S. territory. 50 times stronger than heroin, this synthetic opioid is responsible for tens of thousands of fatal overdoses in America every year. With a thriving market on the dark web, it arrives in powder form or pressed into tablets like these pills from India.
It's not an easy task interdicting something like fentanyl, a narcotic like fentanyl, in the male environment because it can come in very small quantities. It's not like heroin and cocaine where you're dealing with 5, 10, 15, 20 kilos. One of our most unique interdictions is that we encountered the musical greeting cards that you would purchase, and it has the little mechanism in there to play a song when you open them. As little as 2 or 3 or 4 grams secreted into envelopes into that particular part of the card.
Even a pinch can be deadly, so agents have had to adapt. They use laser technology to avoid coming in contact with dangerous substances. The facility now carries naloxone, or Narcan, the opioid overdose reversal drug. Fentanyl was introduced to the U.S. market in the 1960s as an anesthetic. But in the late 90s, with overprescription of opioid pain medication, addiction spread, and it started creeping into the illegal drug market. Fentanyl is wholly made up of chemicals, making it much faster to produce than heroin, and just about a tenth of the cost. That and its powerful high have made it attractive to dealers who now splice it up into other drugs, putting users at risk.
They're getting little bags from dealers who say it's heroin, and it might be a fentanyl analog, only a fentanyl analog, nothing else in there. The person who's buying has no idea what they're getting. I mean, they just don't. Sometimes the sellers know what it is, sometimes they don't.
Prince is perhaps the most famous victim of the drug. The singer overdosed in 2016 after taking opioid medication, not knowing it was counterfeit and laced with fentanyl. The first appearance of illegal fentanyl on the U.S. market leads back to China. It is still the main course of the precursor chemicals needed to make the drug, but since 2005, most production has shifted to Mexico. DEA Special Agent Ray Donovan spent years tracking the infamous drug lord El Chapo. His organization, the Sinaloa Cartel, started adding fentanyl to their heroin around 2011.
Their heroin, the main heroin that was being produced in Mexico, wasn't as strong as Colombian heroin. Right? So they wanted it to be much more stronger, so they started adding the fentanyl to the heroin to make it stronger, to push it into the United States.
Just a kilo of illegal fentanyl can generate at least $1.5 million of revenue in America, according to the DEA. Authorities say most of it makes its way through legal ports of entry, cut and ready for street sale.
If you're a drug trafficker and you have 100 kilos of heroin or fentanyl, you're going to send multiple cars. You're going to spread out the risk. And understanding that if one car gets taken off, you have many other cars that might get through.
Last year, almost 1,000 kilos of fentanyl and analogs were intercepted, but the flow is hard to stem. For Bridget Brennan, hope lies elsewhere as opioid prescriptions decrease in the U.S.
The way we have traditionally seen most people begin their opioid addiction is through the pills. So if we can close that gate, my hope is that fewer people will become addicted, fewer people will be seeking heroin and fentanyl.
President Donald Trump declared the opioid crisis is a public health emergency less than a year after taking office. Under pressure, China now has designated all forms of fentanyl as controlled substances, but its precursors are still legal and eventually make their way to a profitable U.S. market. For centuries, the art of falconry has been a prestigious tradition within Arab society. Today, most of these formidable predators come from Spain, which has become the world's top exporter. Juan Antonio and his partner are preparing to send 52 of their falcons from Spain to Qatar. The elite birds will be shipped to the Middle East, but before they go, they must pass the final quality inspection.
The feathers must all be like these. You see? Complete and intact.
On the perches are many Gerfalcon hybrids, the largest and fastest of all falcons. Every year, about 150 birds of prey leave this breeding site in Castile, most of them bound for the Middle East. There, they are purchased for thousands of euros by wealthy falcon and hunting enthusiasts.
You have customers who buy falcons for the princess teams. So you have to be careful what you sell and who you sell it to. You can't sell a bird half as good as this one to a princess team, simply because you close the doors of a market for yourself.
Juan Antonio has bred falcons for 15 years, and 60% of his income comes from international sales. He and a few others in the region have become the world's leading exporters of falcons. In 2018, Spain reported around 2,800 birds shipped abroad, almost all of them to the UAE, Saudi Arabia, or Qatar. The reputation of Spanish falcons follows them to the annual International Fair of Birds of Prey in Doha.
The Spain weather similar to Al Gulf, about temperature, humidity, similar. When Falcon bring it from Spain to Qatar, they not have feel change a lot about weather.
A Gulf buyer pays an average of 2,000 euros for a Spanish falcon, but the birds from a handful of highly reputable farms which supply the royal families of the Gulf can fetch tens of thousands of euros.
There are sheikhs who have many falcons, some they may never even meet. Why? This is because they have a team of falconers in charge of filtering and selecting those of low, medium and very high quality. What they are looking for is to fly those they find good enough, and only in their first year of life. The following year, they no longer want them and buy new falcons.
With a steady demand from the Gulf buyers, Spanish falcons are poised to remain the sweethearts of elite Middle Eastern falconers. Still to come, water woes sway Indigenous voters in Canada. Terminally ill Canadian teen urges to get out to vote. Jagmeet Singh campaigns to unseat Trudeau in upcoming Canadian election. This is Eagle News. You're watching Eagle News. On the Curve Lake Reserve, some 100 miles northeast of Toronto, the lack of clean drinking water is the most pressing issue for voters ahead of the legislative elections. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who was elected by a large margin in 2015 with a record Indigenous voter turnout, promised to solve the water problem when he came to power. But for many, the difficulties remain. The stack of bottled water on Murray Wheatung's kitchen floor is hard to miss and emblematic of the lack of clean water in Canadian Indigenous communities that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau promised to fix. The 97-year-old resident of Curve Lake First Nation can also drink tap water from a well, but it's running out and increasingly polluted by septic systems, making Curve Lake one of dozens of communities in Canada where the government has advised people to boil water before drinking. 3 decades ago, the federal government promised to build a new water treatment facility on the peninsula where Wheatung lives, hidden beneath an autumn canopy some 300 kilometers or 186 miles southwest of the capital, Ottawa. That's yet to happen, and he views with resignation the government's latest plan to pump water to the community from a nearby lake.
I wouldn't mind voting, but it's not the right kind of government in the beginning. They're just parties that work one against the other. And we're in the middle.
4 years ago, Indigenous people turned out in record numbers to vote Trudeau and his Liberal Party into office after he made addressing their concerns a priority. Trudeau now faces a tough re-election challenge from Conservative candidate Andrew Scheer on October 21st, and the Indigenous Canadians, who make up 4.9% of the population, are expected to play a key role in giving him a second term or not. Curve Lake residents say if the Prime Minister wants their support, he'll have to respond to the many iniquities faced by Indigenous reserves, chief among them shortages of clean water.
The federal government has been aware that we need clean water for over 30 years and nothing has happened. So there's a lot of this feeling of, why would I bother? It doesn't change anything. They don't care about us anyway, so why would I bother?
The Assembly of First Nations believes Indigenous turnout could impact 63 swing electoral districts out of 338 nationwide. At a town hall with the local candidates standing in the October 21st election, Curve Lake residents raised concerns over climate change, rundown housing, treaty rights, violence against Indigenous women, and a feud with non-Indigenous weekenders over wild rice harvested from area lakes. But access to potable water was the top issue. In a video posted on her Twitter account, a terminally ill teen who cast a ballot in her first Canadian federal election from her hospital bed is imploring others to also vote. Her uncle helped her make the 39-second video, which has gone viral with more than 528,000 views, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. After learning she had just weeks or months to live, 18-year-old Madison Yetman said in a video posted on social media, quote, "This is my last chance to make a difference. Please share this with your network and get out and vote." Her uncle, Brent Williamson, helped her to make the 39-second video, which has gone viral with more than 528,000 views, including Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who thanked her in a Twitter message for inspiring Canadians and reminding us how precious a vote is. Williamson told the Daily Winnipeg Free Press that the 18-year-old had been politically active throughout her teens and had very much looked forward to participating in the October 21st elections. He said, quote, "From junior high on, she really had a strong political view and made sure everyone in her life knew what they were." During a visit to the hospital for aches and strange bruising on October 6, she was diagnosed with inoperable cancer. Within hours, she could no longer walk. Undeterred, she voted over the weekend in early polling arranged for patients of Winnipeg's Health Sciences Centre. Afterwards, she flipped through handwritten signs in the video posted to Twitter. One of the signs read, quote, "Despite being bedridden and having very limited time, I still managed to submit my first ever federal vote." Only at the end did she speak, urging, quote, "If I can find the time to vote, you can find the time." With just days to go until Canada's election day, left-leaning New Democratic Party or NDP candidate Jagmeet Singh walks around Montreal to meet with voters as he tries to unseat Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. A voter previously said Canada Party head should cut off turban to look Canadian. According to videos seen on TV, the head of the New Democratic Party was interrupted at a Montreal market by a passerby who told him to take off his turban to, quote, "look like a Canadian." Jagmeet Singh, the head of the New Democratic Party and a member of the Canadian Parliament, is a practicing Sikh who is known for his colorful turbans. He is the first leader of a Canadian federal political party who is an ethnic minority. Singh was meeting with voters at a public market when an older man stopped him. Now he's in Montreal to meet with voters before the election. Up next, Canada's sweethearts captivate its Vancouver audience. For ABC Sports, Leonard returns to Canada for the NBA preseason action in Vancouver. You're watching Eagle News. This is Eagle News. I'm Archie Rose Natividad Yi. Tessa Virtue and Scott Moir, Canada's sweethearts, return to Vancouver at Rock the Rink. Casey Javier with the details.
Nostalgia was the theme of the night as legendary Canadian figure skaters took to the ice and dazzled the crowd with their moves. Every emotion came to the forefront as the show took fans on a journey through the decades. The evening began with Canadian Hall of Famer and two-time Olympic silver medalist Elvis Stojko with an appealing rock number that brought the crowd back to the 90s. Olympic gold medalist Caitlin Osmond and Patrick Chan continued the show, performing their own individual routines that represented the early 2000s. Finishing off the show were ice dancing power couple Tessa Virtue and Scott Moir with a crowd-pleasing program that showcased their powerful chemistry on ice. The two-time Olympic gold medalists are set to retire from the sport after skating for 22 years together. Rock the Rink brought fans through the years of Canadian figure skating dominance through every emotion. The show will continue to tour in various cities across Canada until November 23rd. Casey Javier, Eagle News, 1 with 25.
And now for ABC Sports. Leonard returns to Canada for the NBA preseason action in Vancouver. Zsolti Horvath for the details.
Tonight's sold-out game between the heavily favored LA Clippers and the Dallas Mavericks proved how much the city of Vancouver loves the NBA. The return of reigning NBA Finals MVP Kawhi Leonard showed that the former King of the North is still loved by fans in Western Canada. The Dallas Mavericks defeated the Los Angeles Clippers 102-87 as the NBA Canada Series returned to Vancouver. Leonard scored 13 points in 22 minutes while adding 3 rebounds and 2 assists in his first return to Canada since signing with the Clippers in the offseason. Leonard spoke about his return and the appreciation Canadian fans have shown him.
It's a great basketball town, great city. You see how they came out tonight, full building. So, it was great just to be back. Just going around in the summertime. Even after me signing with the Clippers, Canadians came up to me that are in America or vice versa. When I was out there, they said thank you for everything I've done. They were very nice people.
Leonard wasn't the only one who praised the fans in Vancouver. Mavs head coach Rick Carlisle talked about the city's love for basketball.
The crowds in Vancouver have always been great. They've always been extremely enthusiastic about NBA basketball. It's been a long time since I've been here. It's great to be back and see what a beautiful city it is again, and also to play in front of a crowd like this.
Although most fans were excited about the NBA bringing a preseason game to Vancouver this year, it was clear what the crowd really wanted during the fourth quarter. The entire 17,000 plus fans at Rogers Arena began chanting "We want Grizzlies" in unison to show the NBA that Vancouver is ready and willing to take on another NBA franchise. Although this was only a tune-up game for the regular season, both teams played hard and did not want to give up an easy victory. The Clippers will open their regular season on the 22nd against the crosstown rival Lakers, while the Mavs host the Wizards on the 23rd. Zsolti Horvath, Eagle News, 1 with 25.
That is this week's Eagle News. Join us next week for stories that matter to you. Visit our websites at eaglenews.net and eaglenewslive.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/eaglenews and on Facebook at facebook.com/eaglenews. Thank you for watching. I'm Archie Rose and Tividad Yi. I'm 1 with 25.